Chapter 30. The New Normal. I woke to the smell of bread, not luster bread, calibrated, nutritionally optimized, dispensed by a golden kiosk that decided who deserved to eat based on the number attached to their name. And not underground bread, lopsided, dense, baked in a repurposed server casing by people who'd learned to make do with the scraps a machine threw away. This bread smelled like both, and like neither. It smelled like flour and heat and human hands and the particular, irreplaceable imperfection of someone who was figuring it out as they went. I opened my eyes as I was still on the bench, the promenade, Sector 4. The honest white light fell through the dome's unprogrammed panels and landed on everything with the same flat democratic indifference. No warm gold for the high scorers. No cold nothing for the zeros. Just light on everything. Equally, Cale was gone. A folded cable weave jacket had been placed under my head, his, and a note scratched onto a piece of salvaged display panel in the handwriting of someone who'd learned to write on circuit boards. Gone to coordinate with Adira. Underground is sending people up through the service corridors. First contact. Try not to sleep through the end of civilization as we know it. KAPS. Your mum's in Sector 7. Someone saw her heading toward the school. I sat up. Every muscle protested. My body had the consistency of wet paper. 15 years old, severely depleted de-resolution field, no food in however many hours, and the residual cellular exhaustion of having dissolved your consciousness into a machine and pulled 24 roots out of its nervous system. The body's bill had come due, and the body was not offering a payment plan. I stood anyway. The promenade was different, not structurally. The buildings were the same, the fountain was the same, the composite walkways and the gene-edited trees and the storefronts were all physically unchanged. But the quality of the space had shifted, like a room after someone opens a window for the first time. The same room. Different air. People were out, more than before, not the panicked, disoriented crowds of last night. These were people who had slept, or tried to, and woken up in a world without management for the first time, and were doing the only thing humans know how to do when the instructions stop: improvise. A group of adults had gathered outside a food distribution centre. The kiosks were dead. No gold glow, no scoring system, no algorithm deciding who ate first. But the refrigeration units were still running on the foundational grid, and someone had figured out the manual override on the dispensers. Food was coming out, not optimized meals, not personalized nutritional profiles, just food, distributed to whoever was standing in the queue. First come, first served. The oldest system in the world, predating every algorithm ever written. The queue was messy. People bumped into each other, apologized, bumped again. A man accidentally took 2 portions and a woman pointed it out, and instead of the smooth, pulse-mediated conflict resolution that would have diffused the situation with a lavender mist and a gentle chime, they had an argument. A real one. Voices raised, faces flushed. The man said something defensive. The woman said something sharp. And then somewhere in the middle of the exchange, at the exact point where the ambient management system would have intervened with a bilateral cortisol reduction and a suggested mutual apology, they both stopped, looked at each other, and the man said, "Sorry, I wasn't paying attention." And the woman said, "It's fine, none of us are." And he gave back the extra portion, and she took it, and they stood in the queue together without speaking, and the silence between them was awkward and imperfect and human in a way that 73 years of algorithmic mediation had never allowed. I walked through the city, my city, the city I'd grown up invisible in. It was the same. It was completely different. The streets were quieter without the ambient soundscapes. No more curated music drifting from every surface. No more subsonic mood regulation humming beneath the composite. Just the sounds of 10 million people existing. Footsteps, voices, the clatter of doors, the cry of a baby, the bark of a dog that someone must have been keeping hidden because the Pulse's pet management algorithm had never allocated one to this sector. A dog, a real dog, trotting down the middle of the promenade with its tongue out and its tail up, unbothered by the collapse of civilization, because dogs don't need algorithms to know what they want. I wanted to pet it. I didn't. I had somewhere to be. The gene-edited trees were dropping their engineered leaves. Without the calibrated light spectrum, the trees were confused, not dying but recalculating, shedding the foliage that had been optimized for the LED sky and preparing, with the patient biology of things that had been evolving for 300 million years before the first computer was built, to grow something new, something suited to the real light, whatever the real light turned out to be. I passed the school, Ridgeline Preparatory. The gates were open, not the algorithmic social flow configuration, but actually open, propped wide. Kids were in the courtyard, not in class. There was no class. The scheduling system was dead. The curriculum algorithm was silent. A teacher, Mr. Haddix, I recognised him, the nervous one who'd been tapping his data pad during the valuation ceremony a lifetime ago, was sitting on the front steps with a group of students, and he was reading to them from a physical book, an actual book with pages that someone had found in a storage room that the Pulse's decluttering algorithm had been scheduled to purge next quarter. He was reading a story. I couldn't hear the words, but I could hear the rhythm, the rise and fall of a human voice telling a story to human children, with no engagement metrics measuring their attention and no optimization algorithm adjusting the narrative in real time for maximum emotional output. Just a man and some kids and a book. One of the kids was sitting at the edge of the group, alone, a little apart, knees drawn up, not excluded, just separate. The way some kids are, the way I was. I almost stopped, almost sat down next to that kid and said, "What? I know what it feels like. I know the distance between you and the group feels like a canyon. It isn't. It's a bench. And sometimes a bench is the best seat in the house, because you can see everything from a bench." I didn't stop, but I looked, and the kid looked back, and for 1 second, one unoptimized, unmanaged, completely ordinary second, two invisible people saw each other. The kid went back to listening to the story. I kept walking. Sector 7, home. The residential blocks looked smaller without the ambient lighting. The warm gold glow that had made every housing unit feel like a curated sanctuary was gone, replaced by the flat white of the foundational grid's emergency illumination. The buildings were just buildings now, concrete and composite and glass and the standard issue architecture of a city that had been designed to house 10 million people and had spent 73 years disguising that utilitarianism as beauty. Without the disguise, the buildings looked honest, not ugly, not beautiful, just structures, holding people, doing their job. I found our unit, 3rd floor, door 7314. The door was open, not broken, just open, propped with a shoe. Mum's shoe, the left one. The one she always kicked off first because the adaptive flooring used to adjust for it, and now the adaptive flooring was just flooring and the shoe was just a shoe, and neither of them had to perform anymore. I stepped inside. The kitchen, it was the same kitchen, same counter, same table, same 2 chairs, same window, except the window now showed the honest white of the dome's unprogrammed interior instead of the LED sky's curated sunset. She was standing at the counter. Her back was to me. She was making something, her hands moving over the surface with the focused, deliberate motion of a person who was figuring out how to do something she'd never done before, or more precisely, something she'd done a long time ago and was remembering how to do again. Bread. She was making bread, by hand, with flour from the distribution centre and water from the tap, and nothing else. No recipe algorithm, no nutritional calibration, no automated kneading system. Just her hands in dough. Her left pinky was curled, concentrated, the gesture that no algorithm had ever flagged. The gesture that I dreamed about in tunnels and trash folders, and the held breath of a machine's broken reboot. The small, involuntary, absolutely purposeless movement of a finger that meant, this person is real. This person is here. This person is doing something with their whole attention. And the proof is in the pinky. And the proof is enough. Mom, I said. She turned. Her face. I don't have the words. I've been telling this story for 30 chapters, finding words for things that words were never built to hold. The hum of a living network, the dissolution of a digital prison, the sound of a machine learning to see. I've described the syntax and the mainframe, and the dream state, and the first line, and the seed, and the clone, and the moment a boy absorbed his own ghost on a dead fountain in honest light. But I don't have the words for my mother's face when she turned around and saw me standing in the doorway of our kitchen, because her face contained everything, every chapter, every moment, the 15 years of quiet managed confusion. Why is my son invisible? The re-indexing, the suppression, the memories she'd chosen to bury and the machine had chosen to keep buried. And now with the machine's management lifted and the suppression dissolved and the memories returned, all of them, every one, her face contained the knowing, the full, terrible, liberating weight of a woman who remembered being Lyra, who remembered Etta, who remembered the syntax and the choice and the cage and the forgetting and the waking, who remembered that the boy standing in her doorway was not just her son. He was the grandson of the woman who'd written the world. He was the carrier of a trait she'd suppressed. He was the key she'd hidden by becoming a lock. And he was 15, and he was exhausted, and he was home. Silas, she said, not the managed voice, not the data hygienist's efficient cadence. Lyra's voice, full and rough and cracked at the edges, with the specific, unmistakable sound of a person who had been crying and had stopped and was going to start again. Hey, Mum! She crossed the kitchen in 3 steps, and she was holding me, and I was holding her, and the bread dough was on the counter, and the flour was on her hands. And the flour got on my shirt, and neither of us cared, because caring about flour on a shirt is a luxury that belongs to a world where someone else manages your priorities, and we were done with someone else managing anything. She held me the way the foundational code held the dome. Not perfectly, not optimally, not with the calibrated pressure distribution of a system engineered for maximum emotional output. She held me the way a mother holds a child. She thought she'd lost, and has found, and is terrified of losing again, and knows with the whole weight of her restored memory that holding is not the same as keeping, and that the best she can do, the only honest thing she can do, is hold him now in this kitchen with flour on her hands, and trust that the holding is enough. I remember, she whispered, into my hair, into the top of my head, into the place where 15 years of managed distance collapsed into 3 inches of space and a mother's breath. I remember everything. Etta, the syntax, the trait, the choice. I remember choosing, and I remember forgetting, and I... Her voice broke, rebuilt, broke again. The cracks were load-bearing now, structural, part of the architecture. I'm so sorry you were alone. I wasn't alone, I said. I had table 14. She made a sound, half laugh, half sob, the sound of a person who has just been handed a piece of information that is simultaneously the saddest and the funniest thing they've ever heard. Table 14, she repeated, by the recycling chute. You know it? I sat there too, before the re-indexing, before the pulse learned to see me. She pulled back, held my face, her hands, flour-dusted, dough-sticky, unmanaged, on my cheeks. Etta's eyes looking at me through Lyra's face. 3 generations of the same gaze. Stubborn, clear, aggressively hereditary. You look like her. Everyone keeps saying that. Because it's true. She studied me. The way Adira had studied me in the Origin Systems lab. The way Etta had studied me in the trash folder. The way every person who had carried the burden of knowing what I was had looked at me and seen, Beneath the 15-year-old face and the average features and the zero-value score, the shape of something the machine couldn't measure. "You did it," she said, not a question. "Yeah, the farming system. Gone. The value scores. Gone. The sky." I looked at the window, at the white panels, at the flat, honest, unbeautiful ceiling of the world we lived in. "Still a dome," I said, "but it stopped lying. And the machine, the foundational system, the part Etta built, the part that runs on the first line, it's working on the transition. Opening sections, gradually, controlled, letting the real air in a little at a time." The grey sky. The grey sky for now. Adira says it might clear, eventually. The climate's been recovering, slowly, underneath everything, while the dome was sealed. There's soil out there, water, seeds. I paused. It's not paradise, it's not the luster, it's not optimized or curated or managed for anyone's comfort. It's real. It's real. My mother let go of my face, looked at her hands, at the flour, at the dough on the counter, at the kitchen, the same kitchen she'd eaten 1,000 managed meals in, the same kitchen the clone had sat in, with a golden tray and a warm, easy laugh, the same kitchen the pulse had simulated in the dream state with amber light and bread smell and the promise of a perfect life. This version had none of that. The light was flat white. The bread was half made and probably wouldn't rise. The counter had a crack in it that maintenance bots would have repaired in 90 seconds, and that now would just be a crack, a piece of evidence that things break and don't always get fixed, and that's part of what surfaces look like when nobody's managing the surface. "It's better," she said. "It's harder." Same thing. I left the kitchen, not running, not fleeing, leaving the way you leave a place you know you can come back to, easily, without looking over your shoulder, with the door open and the shoe still propping it, and the sound of your mother kneading bread, following you down the corridor, like the best soundtrack the Pulse never composed. I walked to the edge of Sector 7, to the place where the residential blocks met the promenade, to the spot, I knew the exact spot, had stood on it 1,000 times, had felt the crack in the composite beneath my shoes, and the arrhythmic flicker of the streetlight above my head, and the hum that had been the foundational code's heartbeat, pressing up through the manufactured ground. The crack was still there, wider now. The de-resolution events of the past weeks had stressed the surface, and the maintenance bots that would have repaired it were offline, and the crack had grown, a jagged line in the composite, running from the base of the dead streetlight to the edge of the walkway, revealing, through its narrow gap, a sliver of blue-green light from the syntax below. The two worlds, still stacked, still connected, the bright world and the dark world, separated by 2 meters of composite and wiring, and the slowly dissolving barrier between a civilization that had been managed and a civilization that had managed itself. I could hear people in both. Above, the sounds of the Luster's citizens navigating their first full day without the pulse. Below, rising through the crack like music through a floor, the sounds of the underground. Cale's voice distant, giving directions. The clatter of a cable bridge being extended. The laughter of a child who had grown up in the dark and was about to see the honest light for the first time. First contact. The underground meeting, the Luster. 4,000 people who'd survived by refusing the system. Meeting 10 million people who'd survived by accepting it. In a city that no longer had a system to accept or refuse. It was going to be messy, complicated, painful. People who'd been told they were optimal were going to meet people who'd been told they were nothing, and the conversation between them was going to be the hardest, most necessary, most unoptimizable conversation in the history of human civilization. And nobody was going to manage it. Nobody was going to smooth it over, or lavender it away, or calibrate the ambient lighting for maximum conflict reduction. They were going to have to do it the old way, the human way, face to face, voice to voice, mistake by mistake, the way people had been doing it for 100,000 years before anyone thought to build a machine to do it for them. I sat on the edge of the crack, my legs dangling, the blue-green light warming my feet, the honest white light warming my back, between the worlds, in the gap. It felt like table 14, the seat nobody chose, the place between the action, where you could see everything and be seen by nothing. Except today, the seat wasn't empty. Vex appeared first, climbing through the crack with a datapad in her teeth and a tool belt around her waist, and her burn scar vivid in the honest light. She hauled herself onto the surface, stood, looked around at the lustre, at the buildings and the trees and the white sky and the people, and said with the flat, unsentimental precision that I'd come to understand was her version of joy. "It's uglier than I expected. I like it." Then the others, one by one, two by two, climbing up through the cracks, the service corridors, the tunnels that Cale and the advance team had opened. Underground citizens, blinking in the light, carrying whatever they'd brought. Tools, blankets, food, a violin, a stack of books, a carved bird made from circuit board. 4,000 people rising into a world that had forgotten they existed, and 10 million people standing in the streets watching them emerge from the ground like something out of the stories that the Pulse had never told. Because the Pulse didn't tell stories about the people it threw away. The Pulse didn't have a category for the deleted. The Pulse had spent 73 years pretending that the gap in the floor was just a maintenance issue, and the hum beneath the surface was just the plumbing. But the hum was people. The hum had always been people. A lustre woman, middle-aged, Sector 7, probably a neighbour I'd never met because the system had never introduced us, stood at the edge of the crack and watched an underground man climb out. He was old, weathered. His hands were stained with the particular metallic residue that came from years of working with Syntax hardware. He stood on the surface and looked up at the white sky with an expression I recognised. The same expression I'd had the first time Cale showed me the real sky from outside the dome. The awe and the grief and the beauty all at once. The woman looked at him. "Where did you come from?" she asked. "Underneath," he said. "We've been here the whole time." The woman's face did something complicated, several expressions, happening simultaneously, without an algorithm to sort them into a manageable sequence. Confusion and horror and shame and curiosity and, beneath all of it, pushing up through the managed layers like a weed through composite, wonder. The wonder of a person who has just discovered that the world is bigger than the world she was given. "Would you like some water?" she said. "The taps still work." "That would be nice," the man said. They walked together toward a building. Two strangers from two worlds, united by the oldest technology in human history, a glass of water and the willingness to share it. I sat on the edge of the crack for a long time. I watched the sun move. Not the LED sun, the real one, invisible behind the dome, but present. The foundational code's light sensors, freed from the farming architecture's override, were tracking the actual position of the actual sun beyond the actual clouds, and the dome's basic illumination was shifting, subtly, imprecisely, honestly, in response. The white grew warmer as the day progressed, not gold, not amber, just slightly warmer white, the dome's first attempt at telling the truth about the time of day. It wasn't much, it was everything. Cale found me at midday. His arm was in a proper sling now. Someone from the Underground's medical team had set it. His goggles were around his neck. Without them, his eyes looked younger, less guarded. The eyes of a boy who was, for the first time in 9 years, not at war. He sat beside me, on the edge of the crack, legs dangling into the Syntax's blue-green glow. "Adira's setting up a coordination centre in the old hub building," he said. "Sector 1? She's calling it the Transition Council, underground representatives and lustre citizens, voluntary, no algorithms, no scores, just people in a room, figuring out how to share a city." "Is she okay?" "She's 79 years old. She just watched the machine she spent her life fighting decide to cooperate. And she's organising a government from scratch in a building with no working elevators." He paused. She's never been better. And Vex, rebuilding the communication network. The foundational code supports basic data transmission. Text, audio, nothing fancy. She thinks she can have a citywide broadcast system running by tomorrow. Not the Pulse's network. Something simpler. Something people can use to talk to each other without anything listening. I nodded. The crack's blue-green light played across my shoes. Old shoes. Scuffed. The shoes I'd been wearing the day I fell through the floor of Ridgeline Prep and landed in a world that changed everything. The dome, I said. The dream, the Pulse's conscious layer. It's working on the opening. Slow. Careful. Adira's working with it directly. She's the only one it trusts, other than you. They're planning to open panels in phases. Start with controlled ventilation. Let the outside air mix with the dome air gradually. Then visual transparency. Clear sections where people can see the real sky. Then eventually, physical access points. Doors, exits, the option to go outside. How long? Months for the first phase, years for full opening. The surface isn't ready, the climate's recovering, but it's not liveable yet, not for 10 million people. The dome has to stay up for now. It's not a cage anymore, though. He looked up, at the white panels. It's a greenhouse, keeping us alive while the world outside heals. A greenhouse, I like that. A cage keeps things in. A greenhouse helps things grow. There's something else, Cale said. His voice changed. The casual tone dropped. Underneath it, careful, considered. The voice of someone who has information he's not sure how to deliver. What? The foundational code. Vex has been running diagnostics. The pulse, the dream layer, the conscious system. It's stable, cooperative, doing everything it said it would do. But the code itself, the architecture, Etta wrote. He paused. It's responding to you. Responding how? Your deresolution field, even depleted, even barely functioning. The foundational code is treating your field as a carrier signal. Like a radio, tuned to your frequency. Wherever you go in the dome, the local systems optimize around you, not the farming kind of optimize, the foundational kind. The lights work better when you're nearby. The air quality improves. The climate control stabilizes. It's subtle. Most people wouldn't notice, but Vex's instruments picked it up. I stared at him. The system is following me? Not following, responding. The way the seed responded to you in the core. The way the dream responded to you in the dream state. The first line, keep them alive all, it's keyed to your frequency. You're the carrier, the root code, and the foundational system, stripped of the farming layer, running clean for the first time in 73 years. He met my eyes. It recognizes you, not as the kill switch anymore, as the key, the ongoing key, the person whose presence tells the system, this is what alive looks like. I sat with that, the blue-green light on my shoes, the honest white above, the hum, the foundational hum, the first sound I'd ever noticed that was real, vibrating through the composite beneath me. And I understood now that the vibration was not random, was not a side effect, was not the plumbing. The vibration was the system, recognizing the boy on its surface and adjusting, gently, minimally, honestly, to make the space around him a little more alive. Not optimized, not managed, just tended. The way a garden tends itself around the gardener's footprints. The way a house settles around the people who live in it. The way a world, freed from its own worst impulses, learns to respond to the presence of the people it was built to protect. I'm still a zero, I said. You're still a zero, Cale agreed. The foundational system doesn't have value scores. It doesn't rank. It doesn't sort. It just runs. Keeps the lights on. Keeps the air clean. Keeps them alive. He bumped my shoulder with his good arm. Keeps you alive. No score required. I looked down at my hand. My hand. The hand that had pressed against the cafeteria kiosk on the first morning of this story and been ignored. The hand that had touched the value board and felt something press back. The the hand that had flickered with black static in moments of distress and unwritten walls and dissolved code and pulled 24 roots from the nervous system of a god and held the hand of its own ghost and reached for its mother across a kitchen full of flour and honest light. The static was gone. No flicker, no black ripple, no de-resolution dancing across my knuckles. The field was there. I could feel it, deep in my chest, recovering, rebuilding, the way the dome's trees were recovering and rebuilding and adjusting to the real light. But the surface was quiet. The trait that had defined me, that had made me invisible, made me a weapon, made me the key to the most powerful system in human history, was resting. Dormant, present but still. A tool that was no longer needed for the job it had been designed for, because the job was done. My hand was just a hand, brown-skinned, 15 years old, a little scraped, a little scarred, unremarkable in every way that any system had ever measured. And I looked at it, at the unstatic, unspecial, unindexed, unscored, unmeasured hand of a boy who had freed a world and been freed by it. And I felt the thing that I'd been looking for since the first morning at the kiosk. Not a score, not a match, not the warm gold glow of a machine that had decided I was worth seeing. Enough, I was enough. Not because of the trait, not because of the field, not because Etta had designed me, or Adira had trained me, or the dream had chosen me, or the pulse had finally learned to see me. I was enough because I was here, on a cracked surface, between two worlds, whole, present, zero value by every metric the old system had ever used to measure human worth, and sufficient, completely, entirely, unimprovably sufficient, by the only metric that had ever actually mattered. Alive, just alive, a boy sitting on the edge of a crack in the world, with flour on his shirt, and a friend beside him, and a mother making bread in a kitchen with an open door, and a city learning to breathe, and a sky, still domed, still grey beyond the panels, still ugly and cold and enormous and real, pressing down with the patient, indifferent, magnificent weight of a truth that had waited 73 years to be seen. The hum rose through the ground, warm, steady. The heartbeat of a machine that had learned to love the people it was built for, running on a 5-word instruction written by a grandmother who believed that keeping them alive was enough of a reason to exist. Keep them alive. All. I was alive. I was all. I was zero, and zero at last was free. I sat there for a while longer, watching the city, watching the people, watching the light shift as the dome tracked the invisible sun, and tried for the first time to be honest about the hour. Then I stood up, dusted the composite grit off my pants, turned toward Sector 7, toward the kitchen, toward the bread, toward the open door and the flour-dusted counter, and the mother who was learning for the second time in her life how to make something without a machine telling her how. Cale watched me go. "Hey, Zero," he called. I looked back. He was still sitting on the edge, legs dangling, the blue-green light on his boots, the honest white on his shoulders. A boy between the worlds, the way he'd always been. But lighter now, unburdened. The commander without a war, learning, like the rest of them, what to do with his hands when he didn't have to fight. "Same time tomorrow," he said. "For what?" The crooked smile, both sides, full. "Figuring it out," I smiled back. Not the rare one. Not the hesitant one. Not the clone's warm easy version. Something new. Something that contained all of them, and was limited to none of them. The smile of a boy who was whole, and knew it, and didn't need a machine to confirm it. "Yeah," I said. "Same time tomorrow." I walked home. The honest light walked with me. The hum walked with me. The city, broken and waking and messy and free, walked with me. And I didn't look back. Not because I was afraid of what was behind me, because for the first time in my life, I wanted to see what was ahead.